The rain was hitting the bookstore windows so hard, it sounded like someone knocking to be let in. Upstairs, under a weak yellow lamp, my hands were pressed against her shoulders. Her skin was warm. My pulse was louder than the storm. If Mason ever found out I was standing here with his sister like this, I was not sure our friendship would survive it. But she had asked me, and I had said yes. The shop downstairs was quiet for the night. It always smelled like old paper and burnt coffee, while Mason swore that smell meant history. I thought it just meant the machine needed cleaning. He was in Seattle for a week, running a booth at some big book fair. He trusted me to watch the place while he was gone. We grew up together in this small town outside Portland. Same high school, same late-night burger runs, same promises about the future. Mason had taken over his family's bookstore like he always said he would. I was still figuring out my life at 24, doing freelance coding jobs and pretending I was fine with it. When the bell over the door had jingled earlier that evening, I thought it was a customer who missed closing time. Instead, I saw her, Aria. The last time I'd seen her, I was a skinny kid at Mason's graduation party. She had seemed older then, untouchable, quiet in a way that felt deep. Now she stood in the doorway with rain on her coat and her dark hair twisted into a loose bun. She looked stronger, not louder, just steadier. "Ah, Logan," she had said softly, like she was trying the name out again. "You're running the shop?" "Yeah," I answered too fast, standing so quickly the floorboards groaned. "Mason's out of town." She walked inside, letting the door close behind her. The rain kept tapping at the glass. She moved slowly between the shelves, fingers brushing over book spines like she knew them by heart. "It still feels the same," she said, "like nothing here ever changes." "It still smells the same too," I said, and she smiled a little at that. Not a full smile, just enough to make something in my chest tighten. She stopped near the classics section and pulled out a worn copy of Pride and Prejudice. "Mom used to keep this behind the counter," she said. "She said people bought it when they needed hope." "You read it?" I asked. "I liked the parts where people said what they meant," she said, "even when they were scared." The way she said that made it feel like she wasn't talking about the book anymore. She told me she was back in town helping Mason with some paperwork and family things. She did not explain more, and I did not push. There was something guarded in her voice, like she was choosing what to give away. Then she rolled one shoulder and winced. "Long drive," she said, "and too many boxes. My shoulders are killing me." "That sounds rough," I said. She looked at me then, really looked at me. "Mason told me there's still that old massage room upstairs, not from when Mom tried to turn this place into a wellness shop." "There is," I admitted. "It's kind of dusty." She stepped closer to the counter, lowering her voice even though we were alone. "Do you think you could help me? Just for a few minutes? I can't get this knot to let go." My brain screamed, no. Best friend's sister, off limits, complicated. But she did not look flirty. She did not look reckless. She looked tired and trusting. "Okay," I heard myself say. I can try." The stairs to the second floor always felt like they belonged to another world. The wood creaked under our feet. The air smelled faintly of old perfume and cedar. The massage room was small, with a faded green chair and one lamp that made everything feel softer than it really was. Rain rattled the tiny window. Aria stood in the middle of the room for a second like she was deciding if this was a mistake. "I can leave if this is weird," I blurted, as she let out a small breath that almost sounded like a laugh. "It's already weird," she said, "but my shoulder still hurts." She sat down slowly and pulled her sweater off her right shoulder, just enough to show the strap of a black tank top and the curve of her upper back. "Light pressure," she said quietly. "Just here." I stepped behind her. My hands hovered for a second before I placed them on her shoulders. Her muscles were tight, hard as rope. I started slow, pressing in small circles, and I had watched enough videos online to fake confidence. But my heart was slamming against my ribs like it was trying to escape. Aria let out a long breath. "That spot," she murmured. I focused on the simple rhythm. Pressure, release, breathe. The room stayed quiet except for the rain and the low hum of the old chair's motor. After a minute, her voice came again, softer. "You're actually good at this." "I'm not," I said. I'm just trying not to mess up." "You're not messing up," she replied. Then her voice changed, quieter, more honest. "You're doing what he never did." My hands slowed. "Who?" I asked. She turned her head slightly so I could see her eyes in the lamplight. Calm, steady, brave in a quiet way. "My ex," she said. Something cold slid through me. She faced forward again. "You're better than my ex." The words hit harder than they should have. My fingers paused against her skin. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. "You're better than my ex." I did not know what to do with that. I did not know where to put it. It felt too heavy, too dangerous. "It just slipped out," she added. I didn't mean to make it awkward. "It's fine," I said too quickly. "I mean, I'm sorry about your ex. Not about the compliment. I mean, thanks." She laughed softly, not teasing, more relieved. "Just keep going," she said. "That spot's still tight." So I did. Her shoulders were warm under my palms, as every time she exhaled, the room felt smaller. I kept telling myself the same thing over and over. Mason's sister. Mason's sister. But sitting there, she did not feel like a label. She felt like someone who had been carrying something heavy for a long time and was finally setting it down. "Do you do this for work?" she asked. "No," I said. "I'm a coder. Mostly freelance stuff." "Still?" she asked. "Mason said you were doing that in college." "Yeah," I said. "I fix bugs. I build small programs. Nothing exciting." "You don't sound like you love it," she said. "It pays the bills." "That's not the same as loving it." She said it gently, but it landed hard. "What do you love?" she asked. My hands kept moving because stopping felt too personal. "I used to write," I admitted. "Short stories, nothing serious. I keep saying I'll go back to it." "You should," she said right away. "You don't even know if I'm good." "I know the way you notice things," she said. People who notice things can write." No one had said something like that to me in a long time. "You used to paint, right?" I asked. Her shoulders stiffened just a little. "I used to," she said. The words sounded final. "I'm sorry," I said. "I shouldn't pry." "You're not," she answered. "It's just complicated." The rain grew heavier against the window. I wanted to ask what complicated meant. I wanted to ask who her ex had been, what he had done. But I stayed quiet and let my hands keep working. After a few minutes, she let out a steady breath. "Okay. It's easing up." I pulled my hands away too fast and stepped back. "Better?" I asked. She rolled her shoulders slowly. "Yeah, a lot better." She stood and pulled her sweater back into place. Up close, I could see the tiredness in her eyes. Not weakness, just someone who had learned how to carry hurt without letting it show. "Thank you," she said. "You're welcome," I replied. "Anytime." The word slipped out before I could stop it. Her gaze held mine for a second too long. Something sharp passed between us. Not reckless, not careless, real. "We should go downstairs," she said finally, "before Mason thinks you locked me in a secret room." I forced a laugh. He'd probably call the cops. We walked down the stairs together. The bookstore felt different now. Same shelves, same smell. But the air between us had changed. At the counter, she paused. "You're closing soon, right?" she asked. "Yeah, I'll help." "You don't have to." "I know," she said. "I want to." So we stayed. We straightened stacks of books, slid paperbacks back into place. Our hands brushed more than once. Every time it felt like static. So when the last customer left, I flipped the sign to closed and locked the door. Rain streaked down the front window. "I should go," she said. But she didn't move. I didn't either. She turned to me, her face serious now. "Logan," she said quietly, "Mason doesn't know the real details of my divorce. He thinks it was just two people growing apart." "It wasn't?" I asked. Her jaw tightened. "No." I stepped closer before I could stop myself. What happened?" She looked at me like she was deciding if I could handle the truth. "He made me feel small," she said. "Like I was lucky he chose me. Like I should be grateful even when he hurt me." Something inside me burned. "That's why what you did upstairs mattered," she added. "You didn't take. You just helped." My mouth went dry. "Aria, Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and her expression changed. Not fear, guarded. "It's Mason," she said. My stomach dropped. Is he back?" "He's still in Seattle," she said slowly. "But he's coming home early." The words hung in the air like thunder before a storm. "How early?" I asked. She swallowed. "Tomorrow." And just like that, the room felt smaller than it ever had before. The night after she said, "tomorrow," I barely slept. I kept seeing her shoulders under my hands. I kept hearing her voice in that small room upstairs. Better than my ex. Like it was a compliment, like it was a warning. By morning, I told myself I was opening the shop early for Mason. I wanted everything perfect for his return. The truth was simpler. I needed something to do with my hands before my thoughts ate me alive. I wiped the counter until the wood shined. I lined up receipts like they were a problem I could solve. I straightened shelves that did not need straightening. Every time the bell over the door jingled, my chest jumped like it was a gunshot. When it was only customers, I felt relief and guilt at the same time. Around noon, Aria walked in. She wore the same pale gray sweater and the same messy bun, but her face looked set, like she had made a decision on the drive here. Yet she came straight to the counter and placed a paper cup of coffee in front of me. "Drink," she said. "You look like you've been awake for 3 days." "I might have been," I said. Her mouth lifted into a small smile. Then it faded as she glanced around the shop. It was quiet. An older man was reading a travel book in the back, and a teen girl was flipping through comics near the window. Aria leaned closer. "Can we talk?" I nodded and followed her to the poetry aisle. It was narrow and dim, not the shelves close enough that it felt like the books were listening. One ceiling light flickered like it was tired. Aria leaned back against a shelf and crossed her arms like she needed to hold herself together. "I need you to hear me," she said. "I'm listening," I told her. She took a breath, slow and controlled. "Mason is your best friend. He's my brother. I'm not trying to ruin that." My throat tightened. "I'm not trying to ruin anything either." "I know," she said. That's why this is hard." The silence between us felt heavy. When you touched my shoulders yesterday, she said, I felt safe. I know how that sounds. It doesn't sound wrong, I said. Her eyes softened for a moment, then sharpened again, like she was forcing herself to be brave. My ex used to hold me like he owned me, she said quietly. Even when he was being nice, it came with a price. With you, it didn't. Anger and sadness twisted together in my chest. I'm sorry, I said, as she shook her head. Don't be sorry. Just be honest. I swallowed. Honest about what? Aria stepped closer. Not close enough to touch, but close enough that my whole body noticed. Do you want this? She asked. Whatever this is. The air in that aisle felt thin, like the whole bookstore had gone silent just to hear my answer. Yes, I said. My voice came out steady, even though my heart was not. I do. For a second, she looked relieved. Then reality returned to her face like a shadow. But we can't do it like this, she said. What do you mean? I asked. Secrets, she said. Secrets make people cruel. Secrets make people lie. I don't want to turn you into someone you're not. Her words hit too close because I already felt myself splitting into pieces. One piece that wanted her. One piece that feared losing Mason. One piece that wanted to run. Aria exhaled slowly. Mason comes back tonight. We act normal. We don't do anything stupid. And we don't give him a reason to suspect anything. I nodded because I didn't know what else to do. And after that, she said, voice dropping, we decide what we're doing. My pulse jumped. Together? She held my gaze. Together. We walked back to the counter like nothing had happened. Aria rang up customers. She laughed softly when a little boy asked where the dinosaur books were. She looked like the calm, responsible sister Mason always talked about. But every time she passed me a book, and every time her fingers brushed mine, it felt like a question waiting for an answer. Around 5, my phone rang. Mason. My thumb hovered over the screen for a second like the call could burn me. Aria saw my face and went still. I answered. Hey. Mason's voice was loud and cheerful like always. Logan, you still alive in there? Yeah, I said, forcing a normal tone. Shop's fine. Good, he said. I'm about an hour out. Traffic's not bad. I'm starving. You want pizza? Like old times. Yeah, I said, and my voice cracked just slightly. Pizza sounds good. Mason laughed. Perfect. Also, guess who I ran into at the airport earlier? My blood went cold. Who? Aria, he said. I didn't even know she was traveling. She said it was last minute. We grabbed coffee, caught up. She seems better, like lighter. My eyes snapped to Aria. She was holding a paperback so tight her knuckles looked pale. Her face stayed calm, but her eyes were wide, like she was bracing for impact. That's good, I managed. Yeah, Mason said, still cheerful, unaware of the fire he'd tossed into our lives. Anyway, keep the lights on. I want to walk in like a hero. I forced a laugh. Sure, drive safe. When I hung up, I stood there frozen for a second. He saw you, I whispered. Aria nodded once. At the airport. He said you seemed lighter, I added. Aria let out a breath that sounded like pain and relief at the same time. He thinks he's happy for me, she said. Or he thinks he is, I replied. Aria turned away and blinked fast. We can do this, she said, but she sounded like she was saying it to herself. The bell jingled. Mason walked in with a duffel bag slung over his shoulder and that same grin he'd worn since we were 16. He dropped the bag by the counter and spread his arms wide. My kingdom, he announced, looking around like the bookstore itself was hugging him back. And I stepped out from behind the counter and hugged him. Guilt hit me so hard I almost couldn't breathe. Mason clapped my back. You kept the place standing. Barely, I joked, trying to sound normal. Aria stood a few feet away, hands folded like she was just the sister he knew. Hey, big brother, she said. Mason turned and hugged her too. He held on a second longer than normal, like he was soaking up the comfort of having her close again. Then he pulled back and looked between us, he's still smiling. You two look like you've been working hard, he said. I appreciate it. His eyes landed on my hands. Something shifted in his expression. Not anger, not suspicion exactly. Curiosity. Why are your fingers red? He asked. I glanced down. My hands were raw from cleaning and moving boxes of books all morning. Dust gets everywhere, I said quickly. I've been scrubbing. Mason nodded slowly. Right, scrubbing. Then he looked at Aria. And you? He asked. Why were you here so much? Aria's smile stayed in place, but I saw the tension in her jaw. I was making sure Logan didn't burn the place down, she said lightly. Mason chuckled, but his eyes stayed on her a beat too long, like he was trying to read something beneath her calm. Good, he said finally. I need someone responsible around here. He picked up a book off the nearest shelf, flipped it open, then looked at me again. Hey, he said, casual, like it meant nothing. You want to grab a beer later? Just you and me. My stomach tightened. Sure, I said. Mason smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes this time. Cool, he said. We'll talk. As he turned toward the back room, Aria's gaze met mine over the counter. Her eyes said it clearly. Mason wasn't asking for a beer. He was asking for the truth. He didn't wait long. After we closed, Mason flipped the sign and told Aria he'd be back in an hour. She nodded like she believed him, must like she didn't hear the sharp edge hiding under his calm voice. I followed him down the street to a small bar near the river. The kind with sticky tables and old baseball posters peeling at the corners. The air smelled like fried food and spilled beer. Mason chose a booth in the back where the lights were dim and no one paid attention. He didn't order. He just stared at me like he was trying to solve a puzzle he didn't want to solve. You've been weird, he said. I've been tired, I answered. Mason's jaw tightened. I know you, Logan. I know when you're hiding something. My throat went dry. He leaned forward. So, I'm going to ask you once, is this about Aria? The room felt like it tilted. I could have lied, and I could have played dumb. But the truth was already sitting between us, heavy and unavoidable. Yes, I said. Mason blinked. Yes, what? Yes, I repeated, voice quieter. It's about Aria. His face shifted like he'd been punched. You're my best friend, he said, and she's my sister. I know, I whispered. How long? He asked. His voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp. It hasn't been long, I said, and it wasn't planned. That doesn't answer the question, he snapped. I swallowed. A couple days. Mason pressed his tongue to the inside of his cheek like he was holding back words he didn't want to say. So what? He said. You think you're going to date my sister behind my back like this is some stupid secret? That's not what I wanted, I said fast. I didn't want to hide it. I didn't want to lie to you. It just happened, and you were gone, and I didn't know what to do. Mason's eyes flashed. So you did nothing. You just kept doing it. My chest hurt. I didn't want to hurt you. You did, he said. The words came out flat. You already did. A waitress came by and asked if we wanted drinks. Mason waved her off without even looking. When she walked away, The silence came back worse. I took a breath. Mason, listen. I'm not using her. I'm not messing around. She's not a game. Mason's face changed when I said her name like that, like it made it real. You know what she's been through? He asked. She told me what she wanted to tell me, I said. And you think you're the guy who fixes that? He asked, bitter. No, I said, shaking my head. I'm not trying to fix her. I'm just there. Mason stared at me, and now his anger looked tired, like it had roots. You were supposed to be safe, he said quietly. That line hit deeper than his anger, because it was true. I had always been the safe one, the steady one, the guy who didn't cross lines. I'm sorry, I said, and my voice cracked. I am. Mason looked away toward the window where river lights blurred in the glass. You know what I'm thinking? He said. I'm thinking she's lonely, and you're close, and she's going to get hurt again. My heart slammed. I won't. Mason laughed once, sharp and bitter. You can't promise that. I swallowed hard. I can promise I won't do it on purpose, and I can promise I'll be honest from here on out. Mason turned back to me. So what now? My lungs felt tight. Now we don't do this in secret anymore. She deserves better than that. You deserve better than that. Mason stared like he didn't expect that answer. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced down and his face tightened. It's her, he said. My stomach dropped. He stood up like he couldn't sit anymore. She wants to know where we are. I stood too. Let's go back. Mason looked at me for a long second, then nodded once like he had no better option. We walked fast through cold air that bit at my cheeks. When we pushed open the bookstore door, the bell jingled like it always did. Cheerful, innocent. Aria was behind the counter, arms folded, eyes locked on us. She didn't look scared. She looked ready. You told him? She asked. I nodded. Yeah. Mason stepped forward, his voice cracking on the first word. Why? He asked. Why him? Aria flinched just slightly, then straightened. Because he saw me, she said. Because he didn't treat me like I was broken. Because he didn't ask for anything from me except honesty. Mason shook his head. He's my friend. I know, Aria said softly. That's why I fought it. But I'm tired of living my life around what other people can handle. Mason's eyes snapped to me. Did you touch her? He asked, blunt and raw. Aria went still. My stomach turned. I swallowed. I gave her a massage. That's how it started. Mason's face twisted. Oh, Jesus! Don't, Aria said sharply. Don't make it dirty. He didn't force anything. Mason dragged a hand down his face, breathing hard. This is insane. It's not insane, Aria said. It's just inconvenient for you. Mason snapped his head up. Inconvenient? Aria's voice softened again. Mason, I love you. You've always tried to protect me, but I'm not 15. I'm not your responsibility. Mason's shoulders sagged like the fight drained out of him all at once. He looked at me, my eyes wet in a way I had never seen. Are you in love with her? He asked. My heart hammered. That word felt too big, too final, too dangerous. I couldn't lie. I don't know if it's love yet, I admitted. But I know I care about her. And I know I don't want to play with her life. Aria's eyes softened at that. She stepped closer to me, not touching, but close enough that Mason noticed. You two think this can just work? Mason said, voice rough. Aria shook her head. No, I think it will be hard. I think you'll be angry. I think people will talk. I think we'll mess up. She looked at me then. like she was asking me to stand with her in daylight, not in hidden rooms. "But I also think I deserve to feel something good," she said. The shop was silent, except for the radiator's hum. Mason stared at the floor, breathing hard. Then he looked up, tears shining in his eyes. "I don't want to lose either of you," he said. "You won't?" Aria said. "Not if you don't make me choose." Mason swallowed, like he was forcing something down. He looked at me and his voice went quiet and cold. "If you hurt her," he said, "I will never forgive you." I nodded. "I understand." Mason stared another second, then shook his head. "I'm going home," he said. He walked out. The bell jingled behind him. The sound felt like a door closing on the version of tonight we wanted. Aria stood still, staring at the door like she wanted to run after him. You okay?" I asked. She let out a shaky breath. "No, but I will be." I held my hand out, careful, like I was asking permission. She took it. Her fingers were warm, steady. "I didn't mean to blow up your life," I whispered. Aria gave a small, sad smile. "It was already cracked," she said. "You just showed me where." We locked up the bookstore together. Outside, the rain had stopped. The streetlights made the wet pavement shine. Aria led me toward the river like she needed air. But we sat on a bench with the water moving slow and dark beside us. The town felt quiet, but not peaceful, like it was holding its breath. "I hate that he's hurting," Aria whispered. "I hate it too," I said. "But I'd rather he hate me for the truth than love me while I lie." Aria looked at me, her eyes tired but clear. "My ex used to tell me I was too much," she said. "Too emotional, too needy, too hard to please." My chest tightened. "You're not too much," I said. She smiled faintly. "You keep saying things like that." "I mean it." Aria leaned her head against my shoulder. I held still, like it was something fragile, like one wrong move would break it. "I said something to you during that massage," she murmured. I remembered it like it was burned into me. "You said I was better than your ex," I whispered. Aria nodded. "I meant it, and it scared me, because I realized I was comparing you to a man who hurt me, and I didn't want to turn you into a test you didn't ask for." I turned my head slightly. "I'm not a test." She sat up and looked at me. Her eyes shone under the streetlight. "Then what are you?" she asked. My throat went tight. The river moved beside us like time, like truth. "I'm Logan," I said, "and I want a real chance. In daylight. Even if it's messy." Aria studied my face like she was trying to memorize it. Then she nodded once, slow. "Okay," she said. "A chance." I didn't kiss her. I didn't grab her. I leaned forward and pressed my forehead to hers, and we breathed in the same space, quiet and honest. Behind us, cars passed, lights flickered. Somewhere, Mason was sitting with anger and betrayal twisting in his chest. Aria's hand squeezed mine, and in the middle of all that fear, I felt something steady. But as we sat there, I couldn't stop thinking about one thing. Mason had walked away, and I had no idea what he was going to do next. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Mason. "Come by the shop before we open." No smiley face, no joke, just words that felt like a closed door. I stared at my phone until the screen went dark. Then I got dressed and walked through streets that still smelled like wet asphalt and river mist. The sky was pale and heavy, like it hadn't decided if it wanted to rain again. When I reached the bookstore, the lights were on. Mason was already inside, sleeves rolled up. He moving books from one stack to another like he needed something to do with his hands too. His eyes were red, but his face was set hard. Aria was there as well, standing near the front window with a paper cup of coffee she wasn't drinking. She looked calm, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, like she was bracing for impact. Mason didn't greet me. He just nodded toward the back room. "Talk," he said. We walked past the shelves, past the children's corner, past the little bell that never knew when it was bringing trouble. The back room smelled like cardboard and ink. The radiator clanked softly. Mason shut the door. For a second, none of us spoke. Then Mason exhaled, long and shaky, like his anger was losing steam and leaving only hurt behind. "I didn't sleep," he said. "Me neither," I admitted. Aria's fingers tightened around her coffee cup. "Mason?" He held up a hand to stop her. His eyes stayed on me. "I keep replaying it," he said, trying to figure out when it started. Trying to figure out if you were laughing with me on the phone while you were already. His voice cracked. He swallowed hard. "While you were already falling for her." I felt my chest tighten. "I wasn't laughing at you," I said. "I was trying to act normal because I didn't know what else to do." Mason's jaw worked, like he was chewing down words that tasted bitter. "You always told me you'd never cross that line," he said. "I know," I whispered. And I hate that I did." Aria stepped forward. "It wasn't some plan," she said. "It happened because I asked for help and he gave it. That's it." Mason looked at her then, and his face softened for half a second, like he remembered she was his little sister before he remembered he was hurt. "I'm not mad that you want something good," he said quietly. "I'm mad that it's him." The way he said it made my stomach twist. Not because it was unfair, because it was honest. Mason turned back to me. What do you want, Logan?" "Really?" I took a breath. "I want to be with her," I said, "but not like a secret, not like a mistake. I want to do it the right way." Mason let out a rough laugh. "The right way?" He looked down at the floor. "Do you know what the right way would have been?" I didn't answer, because I did. "You would have told me the moment you felt it," Mason said. "You would have said, 'I think something's happening and I'm scared.' You would have trusted me enough to let me be hurt in real time instead of blindsided." My throat burned. "You're right." The room went quiet. Then Aria spoke, her voice low but steady. "I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to treat me like I was fragile again." Mason's head snapped up. "Fragile?" Aria nodded. "After the divorce, every time you looked at me, I could tell you were measuring my bruises. Not the ones you could see. Not the ones I kept hidden. You meant well, but it made me feel like I was only my pain." Mason's eyes filled, and he looked away fast like he hated letting her see him like that. "I was trying to protect you," he whispered. "I know," she said. "But I needed you to believe I could choose my own life." Mason rubbed a hand over his face. His breathing sounded rough, like he was trying not to break apart. I waited, because this wasn't just about me. This was brother and sister. Old patterns, old fear. Finally, Mason looked at me again. "If I say yes," he said, "if I let this happen, how do I know you won't hurt her the moment it gets hard?" I didn't try to sound perfect. I didn't try to promise something no one could promise. "I can't guarantee there won't be pain," I said. "But I can guarantee I will not treat her like she's small. I can guarantee I'll listen. I'll be honest. And if I ever realize I can't be good for her, I'll walk away before I destroy her." Aria's eyes softened, and something in her face looked almost like relief. Mason stared at me a long time. Then he looked at Aria. "You want this?" he asked. "Not because you're scared to be alone. Not because you're trying to prove something." Aria didn't flinch. "I want it because I feel safe," she said. "Because I feel seen. Because when I'm with him, I don't feel like I have to earn kindness." Mason swallowed hard. Now he looked between us like he was holding two ropes that were pulling him in opposite directions. Then he sighed, and it sounded like surrender. "I don't like it," he said. "I'm not going to pretend I do." Aria's lips pressed together, like she was bracing for worse. Mason lifted a finger. "But I'm not going to cut you out," he continued. "Either of you." My chest loosened in a small, shaky way. Mason looked at me again, eyes sharp. "This isn't a blessing," he said. "This is a warning." "I understand," I said. He nodded once, like he hated himself for it. Then he turned to Aria. "Promise me something," he said, voice rough. "If he ever makes you feel small, if you ever feel like you're shrinking again, you tell me. You don't carry it alone." Aria's eyes shone. She nodded. "I promise." Mason's shoulders dropped slightly, like a weight shifted. Then he opened the back room door and walked out without another word. And the bell over the front door jingled as the first customer came in, cheerful and unaware. Life didn't pause just because our hearts felt cracked open. Aria and I stood in the back room for a moment longer. "You okay?" I asked her. She let out a breath. "I'm shaky," she admitted. "But I'm okay." I reached out slowly and brushed my fingers against her hand. Not grabbing, just there. She took my hand and squeezed. "Thank you," she whispered. For what?" "For not turning me into a secret," she said. "For standing in the light." My throat tightened. We opened the shop that day like nothing had changed. We smiled at customers. We rang up books. We answered questions about bestsellers and kids' stories. But everything had changed. After closing, Mason said he needed space. He left without looking at either of us. It hurt, but I understood it. Trust doesn't snap back into place overnight. Aria and I walked down to the river again. Now the sky was clearing, the clouds breaking apart like they were finally tired of holding so much water. We sat on the same bench. Aria stared at the moving water. "I keep thinking about what I said," she murmured. "When?" I asked. "During the massage," she said. "When I told you you were better than my ex." I swallowed. "Yeah." Aria turned toward me. Her eyes were steady, but there was fear in them too. Some of the kind that comes when you finally have something good, and you're scared the world will punish you for it. "My ex made kindness feel like a trap," she said, "like it always came with a hook. So when you were gentle, my brain didn't know what to do with it." I shifted closer, not touching yet. "I'm not him." "I know," she whispered, "but my body still remembers." That sentence hit me in the chest, because it was truth, because it was real, because it meant loving her would not just be dates and smiles. It would be patience, slow steps, respect. "I don't want to rush you," I said. "I don't want to pull you into something you're not ready for." Aria's mouth lifted in a small, sad smile. "I'm ready for something honest," she said, "even if I'm still healing." I nodded. "Then we go slow." She watched me like she was checking if I meant it. I did. She reached for my hand first. Her fingers were cool from the evening air, and then she leaned her head against my shoulder again. We stayed like that for a long time, listening to the river, watching the lights ripple on the water. "Do you think Mason will forgive us?" she asked quietly. "I don't know," I admitted. "But I'm going to keep showing up. I'm going to keep being honest. That's all I can do. Aria's hand tightened around mine. I hate that he's hurting. I do too, I said. But you deserve a life that isn't built around fear. She closed her eyes for a second like she was letting that sink in. Then she sat up, and she looked at me with that same steady bravery she carried into the bookstore that first night. Logan, she said softly, if we do this, we do it with respect. For him. For us. I promise, I said. Aria nodded, then leaned in close. She didn't kiss me like she was claiming something. She kissed me like she was testing if safety could be real. It was gentle, short, honest. When she pulled back, her eyes were shining, and for the first time since she walked into that bookstore, I felt like the world wasn't only danger. It was possibility. We walked back through town under streetlights that made the pavement glow. At her car, Aria paused. I'll see you tomorrow, she said. This time it wasn't a risky promise. It was a choice. I watched her drive away, and then stood there breathing cold air that smelled like wet leaves and river water, feeling my life shift into something new. Something I didn't fully understand yet, but something I was finally ready to fight for. If you believe stories still matter, go ahead and hit subscribe Stories Beyond the Porch. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel.